Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion on the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Spectrum Extra, which is coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are broadcasting live from the central building here in the heart of our city, Kampala, live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. While on that website, click on the icon with the word Listen Live. You can also find us on the different radio listening apps obtained from the Google Store of your smartphone. They include TuneIn, Afromobile, YoTV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Afrique. Radio 1 is also live on DSTV. Our audio channel there is 897, and on StarTimes, our audio channel is 97. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. And today being a Friday, we normally review the major events of the week. But today we'll be looking at the 30 years of the NRM Liberation. And the question we are asking, are we building a country we all cherish? Now today marks exactly 38 years since the NRM took power. And it has managed to retain it with its leader, Yoweri Museveni, still at the helm. The theme of the commemoration, which were held in Kiija, is the 38 years of NRM Liberation, building a country we all cherish. At this event, President Yoweri Museveni glorified the gains made by the NRM since the liberation struggle. He said the country is on the right track, but identified a number of issues, including in the area of education, where he wants to see free education being implemented. He does not want to see the continuous charging of fees by teachers, head teachers, school administrators in government schools. He says that must end. He talked about corruption, how he wants to see corruption dealt with. He talked about wealth creation, and he says the target is to use the parish development model, improving healthcare by addressing, among others, the challenge of stealing of drugs. Then he talked about security, which he says is going on very well. But then he also talked about jobs for the youth as some of the key issues that needs to be addressed going forward. He also talked about the opposition. Just if you've been listening in, it was in our news there. He described the opposition here as bogus and said they are hobnobbing with wrong external elements to try and undermine progress in our country. His statement was a reaction to a confession made by one of the youth at that event that he was being used by some elements within the opposition. Case in point, he was allegedly taken to Nairobi to pose as a victim of torture when actually he had been involved in an accident. And the President says, with time, these people will be exposed. But generally speaking, is a reason for Ugandans to actually celebrate the 38 years of the NRM in power. What about the theme, 38 years of the NRM Liberation, building a country we all cherish? What does this theme call us to do? I have a panel of four. Let me introduce them. Mr. Ivan Bowe, lawyer, human rights activist, who also served as the Guild President of Makerere University in the year 2014-2015. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on Spectrum Extra.
Thanks for hosting me in particular, and I greet all our listeners.
You love yourself.
Of course, I do. I do.
Also in studio, Mr. Alexander Kyokwijuka, entrepreneur and aspiring politician. This one is from Ndorwa East in Kabale district. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, and good evening, dear listeners, and happy liberation to Ugandans.
Mr. Job Kiija, Associate Director at Innovation for Democratic Engagement and Action. This man is a civil society actor and a proponent of constitutional reforms. He is involved in efforts for pushing for those reforms ahead of the 2026 general elections. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Good evening, listeners and viewers of Spectrum tonight.
Lastly but not least, Mr. Augustine Otuko. He's a private secretary to the President. He is in charge of the political affairs desk in the President's office. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Anderson, once again, and good evening, listeners out there. It's a pleasure being here to share again once more.
Dear listeners, join this discussion by sharing with us your views using our WhatsApp line, which is 0703-090-090. You can also do that via Twitter. Our Twitter handle, you can look for at Radio 1 FM 90, or you can also use my Twitter handle, which is at Underluxon. The hashtag there is Spectrum Extra. I'll begin with you, Alexander. 38 years of the NRM Liberation. Is there a reason for us actually to celebrate, especially as young people? All of you here on the desk, I made it a point to bring people who are young, who are not caught in the past, but are able to reflect on the issues that have been going on from the time NRM took power.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for number one, for hosting us. I want to first of all take this opportunity to congratulate Ugandans, especially His Excellency Yoweri Museveni and all the other players that have brought Uganda thus far. Upon reaching 38 years of liberation, it is no mean achievement and milestone, and we must appreciate all those that have really made efforts to drive this country to where we are today. I want to appreciate and respond to you, especially are we really sort of building a Uganda that we all cherish. I think that we are largely doing that, and I am personally proud that a few of us, especially who came from the village and have enjoyed the peace and security, the free education and the like, we are able to also, touch into the Uganda that we are building, especially the future. And I want to highlight a number of things, a few points that the President pointed out, especially free education. I am sure myself and a few of my fellow panelists could be products of the UPE. And I know that whereas UPE may not be the best that maybe some of the average Ugandans out there look at, but I want to appreciate that it has been able to help those that would not have otherwise afforded to go to school, especially those in the villages, like where I come from in Chigarama, in Ndorwa East. I also want to appreciate that if the President is committing that we are going to do to make UPE much better and improve where there are gaps here and there, I think that is a good point. The other point that the President pointed out is wealth creation. I think that Uganda being a developing country, we cannot look away when people are still a bit grappling with poverty. And some of them, a reasonable number, are still not yet able to afford 2 meals a day and the basics of life. We talk about, food, shelter, and the like. So I think that the President makes a very good point there, and I'm happy that he refers to the parish development model, which in my view, if implemented well, I have always mentioned that I think that the common person at the grassroots is finally going to get a program that is going to help them, get better. The third point he mentioned is health, improving health. Kenneth, you know that we have, health facilities, medical facilities, across the country. At least I know that in where I come from, there are health center 2s and health center 3s, at least at every, sub-county. And much as this is not yet sufficient, but I think that if the service delivery is improved, especially the availability of drugs and other services in these centers, if it is improved and people are able to get the basic treatment for malaria, for these other illnesses that disturb us every day, that should be, able to help us. The President, mentions what I call a magic bullet, job creation for young people. Kenneth, it is not a secret that this country has a very big number of young people, including ourselves, and majority of them are grappling with youth unemployment, even when they have gone to school and they have, degrees and the like. So I think that one thing that this country is still, facing as a challenge is that we do not have very many job creators. And I think that once we are able to empower young people to create their own jobs rather than seeking jobs elsewhere, because the employment opportunities may not be sufficient for all those that are seeking for them, I think that that will help us a great deal. And as I conclude, I want to appreciate the President, especially on peace and security, from the time of instability before the NRM government took power to the very recent, war in the north, and now the skirmishes in the Kasese sub-region, in the Rwenzori sub-region. I think that the president has done so well, and Ugandans have done so well, and we continue to press so that we can be able to get, Uganda more free and more peaceful and more secure, so that then we can also have the guts and efforts to fight the corruption that I think is a very strong cancer that is eating up the spine of this country. And as young people, and me as an aspiring leader, I think that this is a point that every Ugandan should, get up and we speak in unison against corruption and fight it. I thank you so much.
All right, let's hear from Job. Your initial thoughts before we dig deeper into the thematic issues we need to tackle, because we'll be looking at this discussion from the angle of the economy, governance, and then the other issues that will keep coming in. Job, your initial thoughts. Live from Kiija, you followed what was happening there, and speech roughly of the president. Did he capture the key issues that you think are on the minds of Ugandans?
Well, I think for me, first of all, it's really to point out how the intolerance that I still see our president exhibiting. And I think as a statesman, as our judge, as someone that has led this country for quite some time, he needs to be formulating a different kind of politics. The kind of language that I hear him using, like today, about the opposition, for instance, castigating them for apparently going in foreign countries and then mudslinging the country, especially when we know why whatever is going on in terms of the sanctions that have been put on certain Ugandans in the security circles, what we are seeing happening to the economy, in terms of the funding. We all know the factors that actually are leading to that. It is nothing to do with the opposition and whatever rhetoric they go spreading outside this country. We know that we have fundamental challenges to do with human rights. We all know of the abductions which happened before, during, and after the elections. And we know it so well that that has actually painted a very bad image on our human rights record. So for me, to continue hiding our heads in the sand and put the blame elsewhere, when actually we know that the blame is with the security forces, which the president, he himself, is the commander of chief, is the commander of chief of, in chief of, is actually quite problematic. It depicts someone who is not willing to have an honest conversation on the challenges that the country is having. And I think for me, if I were to send one message to the president, is to say, you know what, you need to calm down and reflect on the challenges that we are facing. Let us just face them face on without trying to put the blame elsewhere. All right, Mr. Otuko, your initial thoughts.
Well, I think the president, in his address, tried to bring out, one, the opportunities the country has had. He gives us first where we have come from, and after giving us where we have come from, he also indicates to us what the opportunities are that the country is having in terms of trade, in terms of partnerships. Then also he gives us the vision that he has in terms of expanding the GDP of Uganda from the current 50 billion to 500 billion. And this is quite, to me, an opportunity for us to be able to examine how do we be able to multiply our GDP from the current 50 billion to the 500 billion. But of course, he enumerates what the strategy has been and how we have come to where we are. But also, in terms of economy, he indicates to us that we were doing well. Probably, I think we were growing at 6%, but aware of the global shocks, then our economy slowed down. But we have picked up as we speak now. And he says we are now at about 5.2%, going back to the 6% that we had before. And in terms of politics, I think the president is clearly indicating that, yes, we cannot rule out the fact that there are those individuals who are compradors, who are being used by external states to sabotage. He mentioned the issue of the refinery. He mentioned different projects that have been sabotaged by the West, and some Ugandans are part of these syndicate moves to ensure that probably government is not seen doing programs that are pro-people, and somehow exposing us as an anti-people government, which is not the case. And I think he has reasons why he's coming from that direction, and I think as somebody who works in his office, I'm able to appreciate that he's right to raise this concern, because we have seen political leaders within our country probably speak in public how they are excited about the budget cuts and so on, the withdrawal of funding and so on and so forth. But this is coming from that direction. And the last one maybe that I can say is that yes, he raises the question of human rights, and in his speech he says in some of these issues the responsible authorities should be able to take interest in. But of course we have also had revelations of stories that have been told by individuals who have been found out to be lying of their stories. But of course there are also stories of true concern by individuals, and we as a state would be interested in knowing those that are lying, but also how to address the issues that could be rightly raised.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's first hear the initial thoughts of Ivan before we dig deeper into the discussion.
I think whereas the movement took power 38 years ago, the initial agenda, as traded and promoted to Ugandans, has long been lost. In short, we were duped. They liberated themselves, but also on a deeper analysis, they put up the fire. They had to light the fire, put it out, and then celebrated for putting it out. When we talk about security, the most treasured thing of the NRM, what the NRM trades, is that they take a very microscopic position on the issue of security. But even then, who was fighting the governments in power? If we interrogate that alone, who was fighting the Amin government? Who was fighting Obote? So who was part of the infrastructure that created the insecurity? But at 38 years, we stopped defining security as the presence of guns, as silence of the guns. We talk about more pertinent issues that are more dangerous than the sound of the guns. But even the guns themselves still sound. It's just that some of us are privileged that they don't sound in our compounds. So I want to clearly state that these assertions are cosmetic in terms of what the president delivers. And for 38 years, usually countries that develop take about 20 years. That's the span in which countries can either develop after a particular crisis or they fail to develop. We are in extra. And everything, even the good things that existed, for example, systems, institutions, including the public service itself, have collapsed. We have a modern city than we had in 1986. When you look at the functions of a state and a government, we have failed. I mean, abductions, we had them in 1971, we are told. These ones, it's just that we still have them. And those who accuse the other leaders, the Amin, the Obote, are the ones carrying out these abductions. And when a commander-in-chief for the last 10 years talks about ending these and they continue to persist and actually they increase, then it is, I think, about time President Museveni humbly accepts that he has failed, that the revolution was lost. You know, it's very easy to capture power and lose the revolution. And that's where we are as a country.
All right. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's now go for that break. When we return, we'll be digging deeper side of governance, issues to do with the economy, a number of issues there that President Yoweri Museveni talked about today, but also yesterday, last evening, in his television address as we prepare to commemorate this day. Stay tuned. Radio 1 FM 90 will continue after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90. Be part of this discussion. Share with us your views using the WhatsApp line, which is 0703-090-090. But you can also share with us via Twitter, X. You know, the things have been changing, so we are on X. You can use my Twitter, my X handle, which is at @Luxon. You can also use the Radio 1 X handle, which is at Radio 1 FM 90. Hashtag there is Spectrum Extra. Well, let's now dig deeper and look at some of the issues you've all talked about. And we'll begin from that point where Ivan Bowe ended when he says that the NRA lost the revolution. They are no longer living for the ideals that they actually fought for. And let's try to analyze that issue. And we'll begin with the economy, maybe. And I'll come to you, Kyokwijuka, entrepreneur. Let's look at the economy. What the NRM actually says, they took over at the time when the economy was down. They had to do a recovery. We reached a point where we are now at what they say a takeoff stage. We have even heard that we are going to become a middle-income country. Actually, the president talked about it the other time, actually announced. And right now, the president keeps on saying we are unstoppable. Even if we are not given loans, we will still develop at the rate that we want. Is the economy working for this country, Mr. Kyokwijuka?
Thank you so much, Anderson. Number one, yes, we may not be where we are supposed to be, understandably, but I always want to be hopeful because I know for sure that the Uganda that President Museveni and his colleagues inherited in 1986 is not the same Uganda that we have today. Even if you wanted to discredit everything that has been done.
And Ivan tells you that they participated in creating that Uganda that they found around when they returned.
Yeah, when we are to discuss matters of strategy, sometimes if you have to build a better house, you may have to, put down the old one that looks bad. So, but that, I will not go there. So I think that for me, my understanding of where we are as a country and looking at our economy, I think that we still have less Ugandans involved in production and trade. We still have less Ugandans, involved in export trade. And I think that as a country, we still import quite a lot. But that not to say that there are no efforts to make sure that more Ugandans get into production, value addition, export. And I think that the government has put in place a number of enablers, including the policies like the Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, to see how we can, reduce on the import, burden and get more Ugandans, to produce and then, get to tap into the money economy. I also think that looking at the initiatives that government has put in place, smart Ugandans, Ugandans who are smart and, forward-looking, should be able to take advantage of most of those, enablers and be able to tap into the money economy. Talk about the parish development model, which is now looking at getting the most lower person, the farthest that you can think about, so that they can get into to do something that can improve their household income, and at the end of the day we would see the GDP increase, improve a little bit. I also think that Ugandans, especially the common Ugandan, still have some little bit of fear and a wrong mindset about involving in production, involving in the activities that could really improve the performance of our economy. But I think that is something that we can all do to make sure that we build a positive culture that looks at creating jobs, number one, creating enterprises, adding value to what we produce, especially agricultural produce, taking advantage of the gold that we have in this country, the minerals and all of those things. I mean, where I come from, there are minerals that I learned until recently that they actually minerals that people can actually take advantage of and get to earn money. So I think that yes, our economy may not be where it is supposed to be, but I also think that it is where it is much better than where President Museveni inherited this country. And I also want to be hopeful and keep hopeful that we are headed for the best. If we all can do our part, the private sector do their part, the public bureaucrats do their part, the politicians do their part, and every other Ugandan does their part, I think that we should be able to see this economy getting better and Uganda developing. Thank you.
Job, the President talks about a strategy that is going to be put forward, which will increase the GDP of the country tenfold. But also very critical as far as the economy is concerned, the issue of wealth creation hinged on the parish development model. Your take on the strategy that is being put forward, and generally speaking, your take on the state of the economy during all this time. Are we moving or we are stuck?
When I was coming here, I saw something interesting on in the press that when the president took over power in 1986, 1 year later, he made an interesting remark about the debt situation that he found the country in. And he did mention that he was so surprised that he found Uganda with a debt worth $2 billion. And he wondered what Obote had done with that kind of money to have left Uganda with all that debt. At the moment, as we speak, Uganda's debt is at $25 billion. So, well, a number of things have happened, but I think for us to be more indebted than where he found the country is such an indictment on the economic situation that he has created. Second, of course, when you look at the economy, yes, we can see in actual figures, you are seeing growth, but the question you need to be asking yourselves is whose economy is it? Who is the economy facilitating? If you look at the studies that even are published by the World Bank, they're telling you 30% of Ugandans are chronically poor. Now, and when we are looking at the poverty line, in Uganda's case, we use $1. In other countries, it is $2. So which means we actually are far below even what other countries are using as their poverty line. But you find that 30% are really way below that. So the question then is that how do we shift our economy from that chronic poverty? Because if you actually just moved it to $2, there's a high likelihood that you'll find that 60% of Ugandans are actually falling in the poor category. So I think when you're asking the question of the growth of the economy, you need to be able to ask yourselves the question, whose economy is it? Who is this growth facilitating? Recently, of course, one of the most trending stories in social media, I think yesterday or the other, and even in the international press, is a remark by one of the ministers that I think made a very unfortunate remark that Ugandans who are dying of hunger are idiots. And I quickly checked the statistics that we have, and I think just last year, we had about over 3,000, I think close to 3,000 Karamojongs who died in Karamoja because of hunger. And so, okay, idiots, let's say 3,000 idiots who died because of hunger. Okay? Now, when you ask yourself, yes, we are looking at PDM, we are looking, what factors actually are contributing to this hunger? I did a study in the build-up to the 2021 elections, without even going to Karamoja, just in Bunyoro sub-region, where I come from, in Hoima, Kikuwe, and the neighboring districts. And one of their biggest challenges was actually a crisis of food insecurity, that there had been promotion of growth of sugarcane by these companies that have gone there. Of course, we've had all the challenges that have emerged with Ugoma Forest and the others. And people are abandoning the subsistence agriculture that they were engaged in initially, and they are now embarking on commercial agriculture, growth of sugarcane. There are a number of challenges with the sugarcane payment. I mean,
the cash crop economy.
The cash crop economy. Now, because of the abandonment of this of the subsistence economy, there was a scarcity of food. Okay? This is Bunyoro. Okay, there was a scarcity of food. Now, because of that, people who had food actually had the challenge that people were stealing food from their gardens, and it was such a big problem. Now, when you have an economy that is structured that way, that yes, on the one hand you're trying to deal with the cash income generation, and on the other you're not dealing with other basics. You're not building the capacity or the competence of these people to know that when you're shifting from a subsistence economy to a cash economy, there are some of these shock absorbers that you need to be able to put in place in order for you to thrive in this economy. Then I think it becomes it becomes quite problematic. Finally, I think the point that I need to make is really around the private sector. The private sector is championed as the engine of the economy. And I think it's, of course, what that means that without the private sector, probably you'll not have an economy. But private sector also tells you that they have a number of challenges that they are still faced with. Systemic challenges, the challenge of corruption. I think about 3-4 years back, a study was done by the EU and the Private Sector Foundation. And they were asking what are these key challenges that the private sector was facing. And corruption emerged among the top 3. And if they tell you what they go through to even get tenders from government, to facilitate these tenders throughout the period of the execution, it is really quite telling on how not ready we are to actually be able to deal with the systemic challenges to propel our economy forward.
All right. Let's hear from Ivan on the issue of the economy. And on the side of the economy, one of the things that actually stands out that the president also talks about is the issue of job creation. As far as he's concerned, formal employment has recovered from the time we had COVID-19, and his basis is the fact that the payee register has expanded from 1,422,857 employees in the financial year 2021-2022 to 1,624,072 employees in the year 2022-2023. In other words, people getting into formal employment, the numbers have increased, and generally a reflection that more jobs are being created. And he also highlights a number of areas. Emioga has created 378,640 jobs. PDM, 1,627,307 jobs. Free Zones Authority, 9,421. UDB, 41,338 jobs. So on the side of jobs, the economy is doing well, which is a reflection that the economy is actually getting better.
I do not want us to be lazy. You see, jobs can be jobs. But what is the quality of those jobs? How much are those jobs paying? Those questions are not for the lazy people. So, I think by far one of the state functions is to make sure that there are policies that enable businesses to thrive. From my legal practice, doing business in Uganda is hard. Doing business in Uganda is hard. Actually, there are also studies that show that it is very hard to do business in Uganda, but also those that manage to start do not see their second birthday. Most of our businesses statistically collapse within a period of 1 year. And those are critical concerns. But I want to take you back a bit in history. when it comes to our economy. Our economic problems, the ones we see now, were actually have been by design the input of the NRA and the NRM. And I want to tell you that we were given quinine but sugar-coated. So for the larger part, from 1986 to about COVID is when the sugar coat is getting off. When they show you that, when they give us statistics, by then the economy was this, now it has, what is the value of that time, of that money, of the strength of that in the current day? So, but I want to tell you some of the things that led us to an economy that is a gig economy currently. One, we have a weaker shilling than we had in 1986. You can challenge me on that. Some of the countries that, some of the cash crops that were a strength of our economy regionally. We have regions that were good in coffee. We had regions that were
specialization.
Yes.
Zoning.
Cotton.
Yes. All of them, by I think 1995, were getting to their knees. I just want to explain to you in a bigger way. Things, crops that made people rich and people to be financially stable. Cooperative unions that provide a safety net for people to educate their children were all, in a way, demobilized. When we look at institutions, great institutions like the Coffee Marketing Board, were all brought to their knees, not by any other person, but by the NRA. We had a very indisciplined and uncontrolled privatization. The critique of Ezra's Ruma, Professor Ezra's Ruma, stands out. You know, the dismantling of Uganda Commercial Bank and all that. We changed the currency, and people lost a lot of money. I think to some point, even up to now, people have not realized that actually this was a scam. You know, this was the NRA building ground. In the meantime, foreign investments were coming. They would have happened either way, even if NRA was not here, by the way. They would have happened. Because where there is demand, there must be supply. So, either way, we cannot praise them for some of the direct investments. No. They would have happened either way. So, what we see today, the gig economy, the West, the debt is rising, and where does that money go? The government, the bloated government, the bloated public administration. And I want to tell you that corruption was a problem when it started in 1986. I made a record of the beginning with Uganda Airlines and the purchase of vehicles from Spain. At first it was a problem. At the moment is the tool of survival for this regime. It thrives on corruption. It thrives on corruption. It has become...
You can't suggest that. This government has put in place structures, including the IGG. We have units within the president's office to deal with corruption. The president has been talking about the corrupt, and we have even seen some people being prosecuted.
My brother, as I said, I am not one of the lazy kind.
But
what I've told
you is also a fact.
Having bodies and offices or structures, and you fail those structures systematically only gives protection or furtherance of corruption.
All right.
To show you a bit,
Very quickly.
If those who are working would have lower corruption levels, but every year we are progressing upwards. The curve is progressing upwards on corruption. That means the problem is that whereas the fight is declared, the fight is not fought.
All right. Mr. Otuko, your take on the issues of the economy and probably responding to some of these issues our colleagues have put across, if you don't mind.
I was listening to my brother Ivan carefully when he was speaking, and I almost interjected, but I allowed him. I allowed him to complete his submission. Before I respond to him, allow me to say this: the president's speech comprehensively addressed a number of issues concerning the economy. He was able to tell us about the tourism, how it has expanded, and the opportunities available. I remember when he was speaking, he gave an example of Vietnam, his interaction with the delegation from Vietnam, and they were telling him that every year they channel out almost 10 million tourists, and he said if Uganda could only get 1 million tourists. So he gave a basis where we were and how we have expanded in form of tourism. And he says we still have the potential to even do much better. He also talked about the inflation. He basically quoted how our inflation was skyrocketing to double digits. I think it reached 10.6%. And he says the government has worked around the clock and it has stabilized. And indeed, it has. On the other hand, the president also cited the expansion in terms of exports, and maybe that's what my brother Ivan has not cited. When you look at our exports in the region, first, the president gave examples in the East African region, for example. He said by October last year, in 2023, we had exported $890 million, items worth $890 million to only Kenya. And also in terms of our exports in the region, Kenya takes the bigger share, meaning we export more to Kenya, and followed by DRC and South Sudan. So you realize that we as an economy, amidst different challenges that may be cited out by Ivan, we have extremely done well. When you look at the president's strategy of expansion of industrialization, for some time now, many people have listened to him. They have ignored those who feel he's not speaking any sense. But in terms of real income, real statistics, there is a big impact of these industrial parks that the Kapekas and the manufacturing, the Mbale and others, the Namamve, they've been able to add a brick into our economy in terms of GDP. And I think the president has been very clear on this, and he still insists that we are going to expand much more, and in terms of ensuring that we expand our manufacturing sector, but also expand those individuals that are in subsistence. There should be a migration from the subsistence production into income production. And I think that is what the Myoga, the PDM, and so many other agricultural products are trying to address. They are trying to ensure that there is a massive migration of individuals from producing for consumption into production for income. Because once we expand the number of individuals who are into the production sector, then our taxes will increase, our GDP will increase. And I think this is what the president was talking about. And I think also he cited a number of value chain opportunities that have already happened and those that are yet to happen. And we've seen various individuals across the country in attempt to commercialize agriculture. For those farmers that have large pieces of land, there was a compilation of farmers across the country for those who have land above 50 acres. And some of them have been put in groups and have acquired mechanized equipment to be able to expand agriculture. Of course, amidst all this, we cannot rule out the challenges. But the challenges do not surpass the opportunities that NRM has given the country. Because when you look at our economy in terms of growth, there has been some consistent level of growth at a rate of 6%. As I said much earlier, that there was a slowdown, maybe at below 6% during COVID period, but the economy has been able to pick up, and these figures have been shown by the president, but also other economists in the country.
The question, Mr. Otuko, is why is it that very many Ugandans say they do not feel this economy in their pockets?
Well, you see, these are strategic issues that we should be able to appreciate. Because once you are dealing with first addressing the issue of manufacturing, because Ivan was asking, yes, the economy is growing, but who is growing it? This is a debate that we should get in, but not now. Why?
And the job also is asking,
yes,
who is growing?
Yes, but you see,
But Ivan is one of those who are growing.
Yes,
I don't want you to argue the exception.
But you see, the point is, what has been the NRM strategy? The NRM strategy has been, can we industrialize? Because once you industrialize, you give opportunity in terms of market to the local producers, but also you give opportunity in terms of jobs. Of course, there is a debate of how much these individuals are paid, what form of jobs, but the most important thing is, have you created the jobs? That's the first line of action. Once you create the jobs and the economy has been able to stabilize, at a certain point, we can now get into the debate of the wage bill and so many, the minimum, how do you call it, the minimum
wage.
The minimum wage. But the president has been consistent over time that for now we do not need the minimum wage. Why? Because we need more and more industries to come to Uganda so that we can be able to do the processing. While we are doing the processing, there will be market for our raw materials, but also giving opportunities to the communities where this manufacturing is being done. But at a later time, we can have this debate of the minimum wage. So the point of whether we are benefiting as a country in terms of industrialization, I must say yes, because largely the economy is benefiting in terms of taxes. We are also having jobs increased in the private sector. We have seen this even in the president's speech. It was clearly stated. So I think the question of who is growing the economy is a good question, but we can have a debate about it. It cannot water down the strategy of NRM of industrialization.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. We're going for a break. When we return, we'll sample some of the comments that are coming in, but also we'll shift our gears and look at matters governance. Are we making progress? Because when you look at the reasons why the NRM actually went to the bush, those two issues were critical. The economy, the welfare of Ugandans, but also the manner in which the country was being governed. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, but keep those comments coming. Use our WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra. We are discussing the 38 years of the NRM Liberation, and we are looking at the theme, are we building a country where a country we all cherish? And in there we're looking at the state of the economy. We're also looking at issues governance, but we have some comments that already came in from the WhatsApp line, and we are going to reflect on some of those comments before we actually continue with the discussion. And one we have from Anthony, who says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. Thanks for the show. The only thing I can contribute in this discussion is that the president has been trying so hard to move Uganda forward, but it's unfortunate that he can't satisfy all. We wait for another regime to see how they will run the country. We pray for a long time to see that time. And then we have Yiga Samuel, who is listening in from Namlondo Zone in Bweyogerere. He said, thanks for the show. Mr. Museveni is just unserious. He's the trouble causer. And to all the problems Uganda is facing, let him not castigate the opposition. To an extent, to the extent, even where he fought from Luero, all facilities are poor. The problem is him overstaying in power. And once you overstay, you spoil everything. So far, those are the comments that are coming in, but I know more will be coming in via the WhatsApp line for us actually to dig deeper and look at them. Now, let's shift our attention to matters of governance, and in there, the listeners are actually pointing to some of the issues. Anthony talks about waiting for another regime to come in to see how they will do it. Samuel Mary Namlondo talks about the president overstaying in power. But how are we doing generally on the issue of governance? And I'll begin with you, Job, on that particular subject, because you're a governance expert on this table.
Yeah, I think in terms of governance, of course, there are a number of factors that you look at. Usually when we are looking at governance, we are quick to rush to democracy, but yet there are a number of other areas that we need to be touching. There are matters to do with accountability, there are matters to do with conflict resolution. Of course, there's also the aspect of human rights. But let's look at democracy. And I think in most cases, we usually discuss electoral democracy. We know for a fact that, of course, we have the 1995 Constitution, which I think many of us can agree that it was a fantastic job which was done. I mean, just even by looking at the preamble, we the people, it is something that really gives you the confidence that, you know, this is a document that is going to guide us and lead us on a positive democratic path. But then, and of course, the question I asked earlier, whose economy? Maybe I would be asking when you're talking about we the people, who are the people? We have been having elections consistently since that constitution was promulgated, but elections have been conducted more as a ritual, and they've not really led to what you'd call meaningful outcomes in terms of change. And I'm not talking about change in terms of the individuals, because people might quickly rush to thinking, okay, maybe should the president have changed or whoever. It is possible that you could actually have an election that is delivering the same person, but with substantive changes being made in the manner in which elections are conducted. I think over the past, let's say 3 decades, we've been having elections. In each of these elections, at least I've actively participated in about 4 of them in different ways. We have had fundamental challenges identified in these elections. The challenges have been packaged properly. These are deficits in the manner in which the elections are being conducted. Reform proposals have been made through groups like DEM Group, NEM Group, SEDU, SION. Recently, of course, we had the Civil Society Observer Group, but also we've had international bodies like the EU, who actually now, I mean, if you talk to a number of these international actors, they seem to be giving up on Uganda's elections. Why? Because much as they have observed and identified fundamental challenges that need to be addressed in order to manage elections properly and be able to deliver meaningful outcomes that citizens can actually stand by and defend and even celebrate, you find that there seems to be no political will to address these challenges. And why do I say that? If you look at the past 3 decades, 3+ decades of this constitution, the constitution has been amended. I think maybe more than thrice, okay? More than thrice. Then if you ask the question, so what has been amended? Have we been looking at these fundamental factors or challenges that have been identified in the manner in which our governance is being exercised or our elections are being conducted? I think the answer is no. What changes have we seen? We saw a change, I think it was around 2005, which was removing the presidential term limits. Okay? That was one. The second change that we saw, which was really significant, is around 2017. It was 2017, right? When we were removing the age limit. There's another interesting change which actually was made before then, which was the addition of an eye on the Electoral Commission to make it the independent Electoral Commission. Now, if you look at some of these changes, most of these changes which have been made actually over the past 3 decades, and there are a number of other amendments which have been made, by the way, most of them are those changes that would actually effectively entrench the current system into power and then allow it to continue doing the same things that it has been doing over the past 3 decades, to continue conducting elections in the same manner that it has been conducting elections in the past 3 decades. So if I were to look at the balance sheet or a scorecard of the government in terms of the democratization process and the way elections are managed, I think they would actually be putting us somewhere around orange. I will not be putting us at green. There is the question of participation, citizen participation, women participation, youth participation. And I think we're also seeing fundamental challenges. Yes, in terms of the statistics, you actually in a way see an increase. Okay, you are seeing more youth participating. Yes, there seems to be a creation of space for them to participate, even in the constitution. I mean, they are given, how many slots are they? How many? They are 5.
Yeah.
Okay, then women, I think every time a new district is created, it means there's more space, opportunity to get a district woman MP. But when you ask the question, so what is the quality of participation of these individuals? I mean, of these groups that we are seeing being given more space to participate. If you look at women participation in parliament, yes, we celebrate the numbers, but I mean, when you hear remarks like, if these people go there and even if they can sleep and wake up when it is voting time and they vote for the right thing, I think that is quite telling on what women are actually, these spaces, let me not look at, but the spaces that are being created for these individuals are actually supposed to deliver.
All right. Very quickly, let's bring in Mr. Otuko. On the side of governance, 38 years later, have we made progress looking at why the liberation war was actually waged? We had that issue of the NRA going to the bush because of a rigged election, which actually some people said they didn't lose. They went to fight, and after they acquired the power, they should have given it to DP, but instead they continued to hold on until now. Have we made any progress?
I believe yes. As NRM, I believe we have greatly made progress. We may not have reached that point where everybody desires, but over time, the democratic processes of the country have grown. People have been given opportunity to decide. We have individuals being elected by popular vote across all levels, from village up to national level. So
when
I
you hear
think
from Job, he actually says the quality of the elections matters. He seems to suggest that
you see,
there's a problem there.
And the quality of participation in parliament also matters.
You see, the leaders we elect reflect the people that we have. So we may not necessarily be able to. This must be a generic problem.
I actually want to say something on that. And this is very interesting. It's a very unfortunate remark which I hear also exists in the Bible.
Yes.
But for you to have the quality of the people that you have, there must be leadership for that.
Yeah.
So the question is, what you have 4 decades, okay, and you are in charge, okay, and you're producing a poor quality population, and then you are blaming that poor quality population which you have created to be producing poor quality leaders. And how do you get that poor quality? We are talking about education.
Well, that's a correction coming in from.
We have I was looking at a report done by NAPE when the 2021 PLE results were released, and that report was showing that yes, we are talking about UPE. I think we had enrolled 1.5 million children 7 years before, and only about 425,000 actually did PLE. What does that? 71% dropout rate. That is the quality of population you are creating. We now have the challenge of labor export. You have these graduates that are coming from universities and all these other institutions of learning, and you are sending them away for slave trade in the Middle East and all these other places. And we're having fundamental challenges there. I mean, there's been a campaign on Twitter, another exhibition, about labor export.
I don't think
I mean, if you talk to these people,
I have written about it.
I have interrupted.
What you can say, there are incidents that happen that we should condemn, but we shouldn't say that that is totally slave trade.
I have interacted with returnees from those places who actually have lost their minds, okay? And if you talk to them and find out what has been happening to them, the indignity of work that they are doing in those countries.
Mr. Otuko was on the floor.
Yes, I think...
Let me interject very quickly.
I want to
closer to the mic.
Yes, I want to state that the reason as to why we should have leaders is to guide and also shape nations. If a leader in 40 years can still blame a population that he is presiding over largely, then that leader has a problem.
Well, I think we need to study global trends because
we are on the governance side.
The point I was making is that we do not lack good leaders. But in one way or the other, the population decides to choose certain characters into leadership. And I'll tell you, let me give you an example.
Are there no situations where the process has actually given us the kind of leaders?
Please. When recently I was watching NBS, and one of the leaders mentioned and said he wonders why people go for sensational leaders than leaders with ideas. But that is the structure, and sometimes it may be a wild wave. We have also seen a musician leading Ukraine. We have also seen Trump leading USA. So this is not a Ugandan problem. It's a global issue, and I want to say that maybe Zelensky may not be the best leader for Ukraine. There are better individuals in Ukraine that could have actually led Ukraine, but that is what the population was able to deliver. Even if you took it outside Uganda. This is not a Ugandan problem. But the point I was making is that we have progressed as a country. Politically. We may have challenges that we need to fix going forward.
For instance?
But we must be able to appreciate. Of course, there has been an issue of irregularities. These are public complaints that we have seen, both within NRM.
Which have been a victim.
I've also been a victim. I've been a victim of the same. We've had these complaints. We have also had complaints of credibility of those managing elections. So you realize that these are discussions that we can have as a country, but we must appreciate where we have come from. That greatly above average, we have been able to progress as NRM, and we have delivered democratically and given opportunity for people to decide on whom they want to lead them. The other issue that maybe I need to comment about what my brother Job was saying.
Yes, quickly.
He indicated that the changes in the constitution are a sign of no democracy, and I want to disagree with that. When the formulators of this constitution were making the law, I am not a lawyer. My brother Ivan here is a lawyer. They did not entrench certain articles. They also gave opportunity for Parliament to amend these laws. So in other words, the room to amend the constitution was provided within the law. So therefore, if NRM amended it, it was within what the law had prescribed. And I think we shouldn't say that amendments of these laws are undemocratic. I think that goes outside the reality. The reality is that we can debate. We can debate maybe it was immoral or moral.
Mr. Otuko,
it was constitutional. These amendments were made democratically.
The lawyers say the devil is always in the detail. Is it possible that these people who framed the constitution knew that at a certain point those articles could catch up on them, and therefore they didn't entrench them? We know very well.
But you know what is quite interesting? The CA consulted widely. And these discussions, these views of the 1995 Constitution, the views of the people that later translated into the law that we have as a constitution, was widely consulted across the country. And I think whether they foresaw or not, I think this was an opportunity for them at that time. And I believe we had the best brains at that time. They should have been able to see this. But now that they did not entrench it, you cannot blame NRM for amending it. Yes.
Let's start from Mr. Ivan Ball, very quickly.
I want to begin from a point that amendments can be there, true, but it does not mean that every amendment is constitutional. And it does not mean that every amendment, even when it is legally done, it furthers constitutionalism. So in short, the spirit, when we deal with constitutionalism, we are dealing mainly with the discipline of the people to respect the constitution for the betterment of the country and for good governance of the country. I also want to note that in making that constitution, there were errors that were made. For example, one of the articles, Terming the President by Professor Lokonyango, 1992, warned about, prophesized actually, I will say, Professor Lokonyango, you can look it up, prophesized that with the powers, such powers given to the president, we are going to end up into a dictatorship of which we have arrived, and we have to fasten our seatbelts. So, I also want to state that by far the design of our electoral system does not allow us to have a civic discourse, but also because it favors the ruling party or those in power, it is meant to be that way, to have people who will only put up their hands and not question things. I've lost the count of the districts we have in this country. I pity those doing SST in primary schools currently.
There are very few, less than 200.
So we look at the way it is. I've participated in elections, both adult suffrage and electoral college.
Electoral college.
I am telling you.
And you left all those elections
wounded,
shedding tears.
Yes, but why was it? Because as with a certain phone call, an election changes from Masaka to Mubende. By a phone call, and you informed when the next day is the election,
that the eve.
Yes, and when you reach the election, the law says you should have a conference where you speak. Before you know, Electoral Commission is giving delegates money, and then they are going straight to vote and exposing the ballot. So we cannot. You see,
what if that was done in your favor?
I would not want to be part of it. I would tell you, for example, I was to some point offered an opportunity to bribe presiding officers, and I said that is not how I play it. You see, we should raise and be critical to on these things. You see, there is no political accountability because of the way people get there. You get? By the way, I admire when I watch the campaigns in 1980. I admire when President Museveni, who was for UPM, who was on a podium articulating his issues, of which he lost the elections and resorted to war. So, when we are looking at the character of President Museveni and in the operation...
Are you suggesting right now such campaigns are not being done? What are you suggesting?
Well,
let him conclude.
We can test it tomorrow and say, okay, I'll say, okay, I'm going to seek permission to use Kololo.
We can look at the most recently concluded election in 2021, and you could clearly see that certain individuals were not allowed to go to certain locations, while other candidates were given all the legroom to go and commission markets, and for them they were campaigning. It was okay, as if there was no COVID. And others were picked and arrested from Kalangaland, where
I was campaigning and I had to jump over walls.
All right.
Because I wanted to talk to candidates. You can imagine.
All right. Two corrections. One, I need to correct this impression. President Yoweri Museveni didn't actually chair the Constituent Assembly. It was chaired by James Wapakablo. He actually chaired the NRC. But also somebody has also sent us another message where he says actually the proposal to rename the Electoral Commission as Independent Electoral Commission did not go through. So the Electoral Commission still has
He
that
says
very
there was
name,
a suggestion.
Electoral Commission. Let's hear from Kyokwijuka. You were burning to go.
I want to give information. Number one, I think that when we are talking about matters governance in Uganda, and especially electoral democracy, I want to disagree very strongly with, putting all the problems that we have with our electoral democracy on the character and the person of President Museveni. I want to go back to the point that my brother Job Kiija started from, where I mentioned that the Constitution, Article 1.
Job Kiija.
Job Kiija, not Kiija.
Not Kiija.
Okay. Where he mentioned in our Constitution, I am not a lawyer for purposes of clarity.
You're a political animal.
Where he mentions that the phrase "we the people" gives us the strength and vibe and all that we would need. And I want us to appreciate that this phrase does not just give us the vibe; it actually is the thing itself. And I want to tell you that when you go to elections, for instance, it is us, the people, who give part of our authority, part of our power to a few people to go and practice this thing called leadership on our behalf, and ultimately preside over a number of things on our behalf, for and on our behalf. I appreciate, you see, my brother Otuko mentioned that the quality of the people that we have, you cannot separate that quality from the leaders that we have. It is just that simple, that the leaders are actually voted from among the people. It is therefore also key not to separate the quality of elections that we have from the quality of the people that we have. If we have people who are burning to earn money from elections, how can you therefore avoid the electoral processes being manipulated by money, especially by those who have the money? Number two, when we talk about the leadership and we say we have people who have, who are the leadership is not doing enough to get people from point A to point Z, where does leadership start from? Doesn't leadership start from the person, him or herself? Before we talk about mobilizing, people and doing A, B, C, and D, don't we do these things at a personal level? When we talk about the challenges, the corruption that had, like I mentioned, that has eaten up, our spine, isn't it practiced by the people? Is it only the leaders that practice corruption? Are we not all proponents of corruption? So I think that sometimes we need to appreciate and, drive this discussion to a more realistic point of view. I want to also disagree with, like I mentioned, I'm not a lawyer, but when we talk about unconstitutional amendments, we have a whole judiciary in this country. Has the judiciary come out and pronounced itself that these amendments were unconstitutional? And if they were unconstitutional, what are they still doing in our constitution? I also want to believe, and I had wanted to give information much earlier, that sometimes as people, when I'm discussing some of these things, I want to look at myself and look at Lukwago and look at, Kiija. Much earlier, if you allow me to give this information, we were talking about businesses failing this country, and we're also blaming it, on the government and the president and all of that. But do we, for instance, ask ourselves why 90% of our businesses fail? Even when there is a very free market, free environment, where you can choose to produce, consume, invest, and do whatever you wish in that free, environment. Have we asked ourselves about the character of the people that actually get into these ventures? Have we asked about the character of people withdrawing capital before a business actually takes off? Have we asked ourselves why people actually start businesses? Some of them, they start businesses not out of passion.
And those questions you're asking can actually be applied on the political side.
Exactly.
Do we ask our questions why people are vying for power?
So at the end of the day, for me, before we actually start shooting at the president, can we first touch into our hearts and ask ourselves that before I receive a 10,000 to actually get manipulated and practice in electoral malpractice, that will end up bringing a leader that is incapable of actually, for instance, delivering services. Have we thought about first dealing with the discipline part so that we can get to wear back our value system.
Can I
I find
interject
that
a little?
And I appreciate
very quickly.
My brother Alex,
Mm.
when a person is angry, your issue of morals, all questions that speak to the intelligentsia might not matter. And then we ask questions, is that why are people in that situation? The question, when you keep on undoing and going down, you realize that that our society has been made to be so gullible and so desperate that when you give them 1,000, you can get a vote. I know you were a different kind of leader, because I know you from our times in Makerere.
Yeah.
But the reality of the matter is our population is not doing well. And because of the prevailing situations, politicians have manipulated.
So the
that
levels of
exact-
poverty are affecting the quality of our politics.
Let me give you the
Wind
answer.
up. We need to go for a break.
But
Very
I want to
quickly.
be honest with you. Whether it's on the business or the political side, I want to be very honest with you that we have people who are not strategic in their thinking. We have people who are less informed about most of these processes. We have people who prefer shortcuts before we can think about, doing something that will actually give us better. There is a saying, or a phrase where I come from, that it is much better to take long, like an elephant takes 2 years and produces the young one, and when it stamps on the ground, the whole world feels it, rather than a dog that takes very short time and produces puppies that cannot see and cannot stand. We must teach our people to start having a strategic mind, looking at the future of this country. If we are to appreciate that it is actually the people in Article 1 of the Constitution that give the power to these leaders, so that then the people, once the quality is a bit better, then we shall get better leaders and we shall get better services delivered. I want to beg to submit. Thank
Let's
you.
go for a break, Mr. Otuko. When we return from the break, I'll read out some more comments that are coming in from the listeners, and then you'll chip in, and then we will ask the critical question going forward. Are we building a country we will all cherish? Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our special focus on the 38 years of the NRM Liberation struggle. Are we building a country we will all cherish? My guest this evening, Mr. Ivan Bowe, lawyer, human rights activist, who also served as the guild president at Makerere University 2014-2015. Mr. Alexander Kyokwijuka, entrepreneur and aspiring politician from Ndorwa East, Kabale district. Mr. Job Kiija, associate director at the Innovation for Democratic Engagement and Action, civil society actor. And Mr. Augustine Otuko, private secretary to the President Yoweri Museveni, in charge of political affairs. Well, we have comments coming in. We have Kauma Digo, who is in Mitiana. He says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. I want to be helped by the pro-NRM panelists. What was the income per capita for China in 1986, and what is it now? Thereafter, he substitutes in Uganda. Why is there a big difference? What did China do that we have failed to do as a country? Education in eastern Uganda and northern, where money is not charged, the outcome is evident in poor PLOA results. Say in Bukedi, most teachers sleep hungry and starve in schools. No lunch. HM says you want food, from which vote? Yet it's okay to levy money in other institutions like the police. Their hospitals also never have drugs. We don't have the name of that particular listener. John in Chanja, good evening, Kenneth. And I guess last year in January, I would give my wife shillings 140,000 weekly to buy food, sugar, salt, TP, charcoal, etc. But this January, I have been giving her 220 weekly for the same items. So to a layman, has inflation gone up or down? That's a question from planned husband.
His economy has grown.
Sandra writes in and says, when you are talking about leadership and development, yet we have senior six leavers as members of parliament, don't expect much. Senior six leavers on a committee planning for the whole country beats my understanding. That entry level for senior six for members of parliament should be totally scrapped. Somebody wants MPs to have higher qualification. For you to aspire for parliament, you should have higher qualifications. Mr. Otuko, very quickly, you wanted to intervene before we went for the break, but we also have these comments that are coming in from the listeners. You can also weigh in on some of them.
Well, I just wanted to support the argument of my brother by giving an example that...
Which brother in particular? Alexander?
Alex.
All right.
When he was speaking, I remembered what happened in Soroti. Soroti District Soroti Industrial Park in Soroti City has only 2 factories.
Is that the one for the fruits?
One for the fruits and the other for Wekesa dealing in grains. So I as somebody who had interest to understand why there are no more industries, no other industries being taken to that industrial park, it was quite interesting. 90% of the land is being held by speculators. So when both, these are Ugandans from Teso and Kampala here, when they heard that there was a new industrial park in Soroti, they went, applied for the land 10 years ago, they were given the land, and they have failed to put even one brick on their plots of land to put factories. So that shows you the bigger problem.
And that's the corruption that we are talking about.
That is not corruption. Actually, you see, to me, I'm simply trying to indicate to you that there is a problem in terms of how our people are thinking. That's the point I was coming.
The reason why I'm thinking is corruption. Yes. They had that there was going to be an industrial park there, and probably the district people who managed the land actually knew about that plan, but they went ahead and connived with these people and granted them access to the land, which would have been aside.
I think that is not corruption. You see, this land is granted by Uganda Investment Authority. Individuals apply and present their business proposals. Okay. People presented their very good written proposals indicating the type of factories they want to set up in these places, and they were granted land. And to me, I think it was a good thing for Uganda Investment Authority to give Ugandans an opportunity to develop these industrial parks. But unfortunately, 10 years later, not even one factory has been put up apart from Wekesa, who is a Ugandan, because the other factory is by government. So the point is, we must get out of the box in terms of thinking.
What does the investment court say?
If I'm a Ugandan and I've been granted land, it would not cost me much to look for an investor to partner with to implement these business proposals. But I think there is a problem in terms of quality of thinking.
Now,
and I think I agree.
This is what a serious government would do.
Yes.
Land can be reallocated, especially if it's
that's what they're doing now. That's what they're doing now.
That should be in the investment.
The Investment Authority has actually reviewed the allocations they made 10 years ago. So whoever now has a better proposal and you prove beyond reasonable doubt that you have the money, they reallocate the land. They are doing that in Namave, they are doing that in Mbale, they are also doing it in Soroti. So I think they've been able to, they are now dealing with the speculators by saying, we gave you opportunity to develop this land and you have not. So the second issue I want to comment on this person, I don't know, I did not pick the name, who was complaining about the quality of parliament. You see,
Senior six leavers.
Senior six, yes.
That's Sandra.
Yes, senior six leavers. But of course that zeroes down to the quality. And I have been one of those proponents that agreed with the proposal that was with the 10th Parliament, where there was a proposal that for you to be a councillor at local government level, at least you needed to have a senior 4. And also at city level, you needed to be senior 6. And in Parliament, you need to be a degree holder. I believe that we need to review this constitution holistically. Why? Because there is passage of time. from 1995 up to now, there has been passage of time. Many things have changed. Maybe at the time the constitution was made, there were very few educated people. For example, in some places like Karamoja, northern Uganda, which was in war, Teso, for example, which was in war, maybe it was hard to find in some places individuals that were graduates at that time. But as we speak now, I believe every sub-county has a graduate as we speak now. So the point I'm making, I want to agree with this person.
If not every village.
If not, maybe in every parish. Let me put it at parish level. The point I want to agree with this person who sent this message, that there is need for us to review on who should be in that parliament. Because how can a senior 6 person supervise a PS, some of them who are PhD holders, and they are supervising a PhD holder, a master's holder, and you are a senior 6. If not, you are actually a senior 4, but you did a certificate in tailoring or something like that, and you are in parliament. So I think I agree with the person that there is need for us to review, so that maybe that could help us address the issue of quality.
Let's hear from both.
I think first and foremost, we also have to look at the nature of our cabinet.
The cabinet also.
And the quality and the deployment. You see, when we go to countries like
maybe
picked from parliament.
Yes, that's the point.
There's a constitutional petition which is actually trying to...
Yes, the official by who are senior 6 leavers and the certificate in tailoring and reading and writing, they are picked from parliament.
You see, I would rather deal with a senior 6 who reasons and thinks forward for the country. But also, I am aware of certain professors and PhD holders, master's holders, and degree holders who are a nuisance to the Republic. So, there are some that are a nuisance to the Republic. So, but also,
in all honesty, you know that we go to school to improve our thinking, to improve our reasoning, to have better skills, to be able to manipulate the environment, and
the research.
Do not make a dangerous assumption that we ever go to school.
But you see, we are also taught that at the end of the day, however much you gather academic papers, your character will precede you.
Yes, but you see again,
so if you're a professor,
if we have
and then you are a thief by character.
If we have a few professors who have failed to apply the knowledge and skills that they got, that does not discredit the importance of education.
No, I am not discrediting
a few.
I've said a few. And by the way, I was driving the point home. I was driving the point.
That is the exception. In research, we have something which is called outliers. And I recall someone recently said that when you are paid to be stupid, your intelligence doesn't matter. So maybe those professors are those that are paid to be stupid.
I said some.
But I wanted to comment
very quickly.
I wanted to just make a quick comment on that T6 thing, and then look at with the future. So first of all, I totally agree that it is quite an oxymoron that you have S6 leavers for leaders in parliament, and then you have university graduates being sent to work as casuals in Middle East and all those other places.
Wait, they didn't aspire to go to parliament.
Yeah,
they didn't aspire.
I mean, they didn't aspire because the circumstances. If you look at the circumstances of participation of conducting elections, which I was talking about earlier, and I think you can actually allow me to talk about what the future should look like in terms of reforms, because we are talking about constitutional reforms which need to be put in place.
Are we building a country we shall all cherish?
Are we building a country that we shall all cherish?
That's the theme of this commemoration.
First of all, you start from addressing the governance challenges. Our governance challenges, our governance is largely shaped by the quality of leadership that you have. The quality of leadership that you have is shaped by the quality of the process that gives you those leaders. There are challenges that we've been having in our elections, which I think need to be addressed. There are questions to do with the role of the military. The military has been playing a significant role in terms of management of elections in this country. And that is really, it has been such a big problem. So we need to redefine the role that is played by the security forces, but most importantly, the military in elections. I think the second one is the conduct of the Electoral Commission.
You don't know the role they play?
The role that they play?
The police tells you that they are mandated to ask sister security agencies to help them to police the process because they do not have adequate numbers.
Yeah, and the point I'm making is that we need to be able...
The police keeps law and order.
And therefore they are
adapted
they
to protect people and their property.
I feel insulted by this.
The military should stick to protecting people and their property, and the police should stick to keeping law and order. The military should be removed from keeping law and order because
maybe what we need to address. Maybe what we need to address is the threats to people and the property during an election process. Maybe when we do that, they will no longer be there. But conclude your point, Job.
The police should be getting those who actually...
The conduct of the Electoral Commission, there are a number of inefficiencies, a number of gaps, inadequacies that we have been seeing there. We've been seeing gerrymandering in the build-up to elections. Every time an election is coming up, new districts are created. Now we are creating cities. We are creating...
That's not a problem of the Electoral Commission.
I mean, the Electoral Commission has a role to play in terms
of... It doesn't. Those decisions are made in Parliament.
Yeah,
and the Electoral Commission is told there's a new constituency here, so you should organize an election there.
Who demarcates? Who demarcates? Who does the demarcation?
The Electoral Commission demarcates after the ratification has been done in Parliament.
Exactly. So the ratification is done in Parliament. Parliament doesn't just come out of the blue. And then they start creating...
Are you suggesting that it's the Electoral Commission that actually tells them?
It has a role that it plays. It's not just...
I have heard from the Electoral Commission...
Government units.
I have actually heard from the Electoral Commission on that particular issue before.
Yes.
And they say they only implement what Parliament has decided.
Okay.
So, but I don't want this to be misleading.
Very quickly.
Recently, we had an election petition that dealt with demarcations in Soroti. Why was the Electoral Commission a party? So,
because they oversaw an
Electoral Commission, and this
they
was
oversaw an election
about demarcations.
I think let me give information.
They oversaw an election in a place which was illegally demarcated.
Because we know.
But let's allow jobs. Let's allow jobs so that we cannot chip in.
Anyway, the Electoral Commission by law is supposed to do a number of things. But you know, when you selectively apply what you're supposed to do in the law and you don't do others. We've been talking about accountability by political parties. How many of them are making the returns after elections? How many of them are declaring how much money they have spent in a campaign or in an election after elections have been conducted? So why do they selectively choose to do the demarcation and then they ignore the other aspects? But there are issues to do with money in elections and the politics of the economics of our politics. Of course, we've had a big challenge whereby we have leaders and even some state actors dishing out money during campaigns, which actually has been a big problem. And commercialization, elections have actually been commercialized. We've seen that as a big challenge. When you go to Parliament, the size of Parliament itself is actually not sustainable.
Yeah.
If you look at how many MPs do we have now? 500 and...
I lost the count.
We have 527 MPs, and each one of those is receiving in excess of about 20 million shillings per month. If you do the figure there, you can get us the statistics. I don't think it is sustainable for the economy to actually be financing such a parliament. There are issues to do with the quality of political parties, and we've been seeing what is happening. Yes, we can blame the political parties for being weak, but if we have a system that, first of all, does not allow them to raise more than $200,000 from an external source to facilitate their growth as institutions, and yet you have one party that is actually relying on the state coffers to be able to facilitate its existence.
Are you sure about that?
That becomes a challenge. We know for a fact that a large part of the state infrastructure has been facilitating one political party to thrive.
What I know, there's money given to political parties through the Electoral Commission to share on the basis of numerical strength. So the ruling party gets more of that.
But that's not the only money that the ruling party is thriving on.
Oh,
we also have
we have tell us.
We have money. Okay. okay, let me give an example, a very direct example. During the last campaigns, we had the president moving across the country and commissioning markets and different public goods that had actually been delivered through the public service system. Okay? So that was clearly a campaign platform for him. Okay? And then you had the other parties not taking advantage of the same. You have, of course, we've been looking at the presidential convoy that is even used, the benefits that the president himself enjoys during campaigns.
The benefits of an incumbent.
Yeah,
2 billion.
We've been seeing that. Okay? There are issues to do with, of course, we are talking about citizen participation.
All right.
Okay? For as long as you don't allow effective citizen participation to happen during elections. And how is that impeded?
All right.
It is impeded by the actions that are being taken by the state on civil society. We had the National Election Watch of Uganda that was supposed to be facilitating monitoring of elections, voter education, and citizen mobilization in the elections in 2021, demobilized, banned by just a press statement.
All right, very quickly, Kyokwijuka.
I want to give information.
Are we building a Uganda we shall all cherish? Let's move forward.
Thank you. I think, yes, we are building a Uganda that we shall all cherish. Like I mentioned, I always want to be hopeful that with all that we are doing and all that we are putting our hands to, we are headed for a better Uganda tomorrow. I wanted to give information that Article 179 of the 1995 Constitution allows for the creation of local government units, and the institution in charge is the Ministry of Local Government, and these processes are actually initiated at the local government itself, at the grassroots. The local government leaders do, and it goes through Ministry of Local Government, and Parliament simply approves what is brought to it. I want to thank you so much.
All right, we have comments coming in. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. The problem with Uganda is President Museveni, who keeps on blaming Obote, and I mean for Uganda's problems even after 40 years of his rule. You cannot have a country with these levels of corruption. For example, how do you spend billions of money on teaching people how to drink coffee when the same people do not even have latrines? Just watch news where health officers were arresting people in Kiija without latrines in this era. Until there is political will to fight corruption, then you can talk about good governance. That's Joseph, who is listening to us from Ottawa in Canada. Thank you very much, Joseph, for actually tuning in. David Reisner says it's unfortunate most people claiming that the government has performed well are doing so strategically when the selfish intention of maintaining, protecting their positions and incomes. They are aware that they are talking cosmetically and can only talk honestly when they leave those positions. That's a comment from David. Then we have a comment from Michael, who is listening in from Entebbe, who talks about nation building is a collective responsibility. The late Cecilio Gual fought one fundamental change, that's individual merit, which ushered in multi-party politics. When we focus on tearing apart the person and office of the president and forget basics of governance like separation of powers, yet believe we can fight corruption, that's nothing like nation building. We need to have and commit to collective values, not personal struggles. That's Michael listening in from Entebbe. Very quickly, Otuko, as we come to the end of the show, looking forward, are we building a country we shall all cherish, as the theme spoke today?
I believe yes. NRM, I've listened to the feedback. NRM is not led by angels, maybe that come from heaven. NRM is led by people from Uganda. And these are human beings. They are prone to making mistakes as they implement, as they carry on their duties. So in other words, I'm saying, even when you listen to the president's address, he is clearly stating that there are some mistakes that have been made by those that have been in government. And one of them has been corruption. He is very clear about this. He's also talking about laziness and laxity within government to address certain things that he has been talking about over time, and many others. So the point I'm making is that, by and large, if you put NRM on a scale of 1 to 10, we are at 8. So we should be able to say that we are moving in terms of infrastructure, in terms of expansion of investment. We are moving in terms of improving democracy, irrespective of the challenges that are there. where we have not done well. I believe these discussions have been ongoing within NRM, but also the President has publicly spoken about our weaknesses as NRM and said we as a country going forward are going to address this, and as NRM we're also going to address this so that we can be able to continue selling ourselves before the population.
Ivan Bowe, as we come to the end of this show, are we building a country that we shall all cherish going forward?
At a personal level, I have to first take accountability, and I say I am in my individual capacity. In a collective, I think everyone should ask themselves that question. As the government presiding over this country, I do not think they are building. Actually, they've deconstructed. And therefore, it is incumbent on us to use all tools available to build the country, better country that we desire. Thank you.
Very quickly, Kyokwijuka, your parting words as we come to the end of the show.
Thank you so much. I did not know my brother Bowe to be very pessimistic until today. But, like I mentioned before, I know that Uganda has, come from far. It would be mean if I said that we have not made milestones. It would be rude if I did not credit those that have led Uganda to where we are today. And I would be losing hope if I didn't mention that I think that Uganda is actually going to shine. And I think, yes, when you look at the people who are doing things in the private sector, people who are doing things in government, people who are doing things in technology, tourism, and all of those others, I think that actually there's a lot that is being done. And we can only look forward to, looking at the country that will shine. And I want to thank you so much and bring you greetings from Ndorwa East. Thank you.
Job, as we come to the end of the show, your closing remarks, things that you think need to change for us to actually get where we want to be.
I think for me, considering that today we are celebrating 38 years of the NRM, the one thing that I want to implore the Otukos and Kyokwijukas of National Liberation, especially as in respect to the 39th year, because now you can actually start on this, is to look at the 10-point agenda, the 10-point program of the NRM, and ask yourselves the question, how are we faring on that 10-point program? Okay, what were the challenges that Uganda had then when the NRM took over? And what are the challenges that we have now? What has been the shift in terms of these challenges? So we need to be able to do a proper scorecard of the NRM instead of really saying a lot of rhetoric on, education.
Some people have actually said the scorecard of the NRM should be for 20 years because the first 18 years they actually spent more time rebuilding the country, doing reconstruction. Well,
if they want, we can discount for them and we give them 20 years to look at. But I mean, still, you need to be able to do a proper analysis of, okay, where have you come from?
So
okay?
Do they want to celebrate 20?
Those challenges?
Do they want to celebrate 20?
They want to celebrate 20. So anyway.
Ivan wants to open another discussion.
So on the fundamental question that you are asking of, are we building a country which we all cherish? We need to be able to look at some of these challenges. Human rights. Let's look at our human rights track record. Is everybody enjoying their rights the way they should be enjoying them? Let us look at our politics. Tolerance. In the beginning, I did talk about the intolerance that I am seeing in the language that our leaders are using. If you can't tolerate the opposition as they are, and you're building I mean, like you rightly said, yeah, we get the leaders that we deserve. My argument is that the leadership actually determines the quality of the population that you will have. The leadership that you have in place actually... Hold on. Let me finish my point. The leadership that you have in place...
Do you become a leader first before you become a citizen?
Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point.
In Lee Kuan Yew,
Let me finish my point.
population education before he became leader. No, just go.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for turning up for
free
this
market
discussion.
economy.
Dear listeners, thank you very much for sharing your views with
determine the
us.
quality of the people.
Unfortunately, time is not on us alive.
It is their responsibility to make that quality.
Determine your quality of your Kenneth Anderson.
If you have a poor quality, then it's on you.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion on the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this radio station or its management.